What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today we're going to check out the Huawei P9. So this is a flagship smartphone from the Chinese manufacturer that also makes the Nexus 6P. It does have some familiar features, but it also has a real standout new feature, and that is a dual camera system designed by Leica. So lifting up the lid of the box, first thing we'll see on the right is the Huawei P9 wrapped in plastic. So lifting up the phone, we can go ahead and slide it out of this plastic sleeve, and you can see in this case we have the Mystic Silver version, but it's also available in titanium gray, ceramic white, rose gold, haze gold, and prestige gold. Removing the tray underneath, we'll find all of our individually packaged accessories, and one of them is the power adapter, which in this case is the European power adapter, which obviously I can't use in the United States. But of course, you can just use whatever power adapter you have laying around because it will work with the included cable. Speaking of the cable, we'll find that in the second box along with a set of earphones. So the cable is USB Type-A to USB Type-C, and the earphones are in-ear style, very similar to the EarPods from Apple with an inline remote control and microphone. And lastly, we have a box with all of our paperwork and a SIM ejection tool. So the design of the Huawei P9 is a refined version of designs we've seen from Huawei before. It's very thin and lightweight and made entirely out of metal. So it has this nice rigid design which looks high quality. You can see that we have this metal chamfered edge along the back and the front. And because it's all aluminum, we do have these antenna stripes at the top and bottom. Of course, toward the center, we also have our fingerprint sensor, which, similar to the Nexus 6P, is not a button, it's just a sensor which you tap. Another design element pretty common to Huawei phones is this glass trim piece toward the top edge, which houses the cameras, the flash, as well as the sensors, and of course, any radios that need transparency through the metal chassis. In this case, it's really flush and smooth and rounded toward the edges, so it feels really nice and seamless, and I think it actually looks really good. Along the right edge, we'll find a volume rocker and our sleep-wake power button, which does have a raised texture, so it's easy to distinguish between that and the nearby volume control. It's also slightly recessed around the edge, so it makes it easier to feel for. Along the left side, we'll find our combination nano SIM tray and micro SD card slot, and it is metal, so it fits nice and flush to the aluminum unibody. Toward the top edge, we'll find a microphone, which is slightly off-center, and toward the bottom, we'll find a USB-C connector in addition to another microphone, a headphone jack, and a speaker. So this is a side-facing mono speaker, which is loud and clear without much distortion, so it's a pretty decent speaker overall. So on the front, we'll find a 5.2-inch Full HD LCD IPS Neo display. Neo basically means that this looks great off-axis, so it's able to maintain color saturation when you look at it from different angles. You have fairly deep blacks, although it certainly won't challenge AMOLED for those deep inky blacks, so you do see some washout here, but the colors are very vibrant, so the reds and any bright color really stands out on this display, and generally speaking, it's a nice, bright, vivid display to look at. It's also very crisp. I think a 5.2-inch display definitely doesn't need Quad HD resolution. Now, like a lot of flagship smartphones, the cover glass sort of rounds off at the edges, so it creates a nice, smooth, seamless design that feels great in the hand. Toward the top, we'll find an 8-megapixel front-facing camera with an f2.4 aperture, good for 1080p HD video. We'll also find our ambient light sensor and proximity sensor, in addition to our earpiece, which does hide an LED notification light in the left corner. In terms of our specs, the P9 is powered by a high-silicon Kirin 955 octa-core processor. So this combines two quad-core Cortex A72 and A53 processors, which is coupled with a Mali T880 MP4 GPU. We also get 3 gigs of RAM internally, and the version I have here has 32 gigs of storage with 3 gigs of RAM, but there's also a version with 64 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM. So when it comes to our Geekbench scores, this delivers really impressive multi-core performance, around 6,500. That's one of the highest I've ever tested. In terms of single-core performance, it's definitely not up to the Snapdragon 820 that's in a lot of flagships today, like the Galaxy S7 Edge here. So although we have great multi-core performance, single-core performance could be a bit better. So in terms of day-to-day performance, this phone is a smooth performer, even though we have a fairly heavy Android skin on top of Android 6.0. So although it's not quite stock smooth, it is fairly close. The P9 is also equipped with a 3000 mAh battery, which is fairly standard for most flagship smartphones today, and it delivers pretty solid results in my benchmark testing. So with the screen set to maximum brightness, I was able to get 4.5 hours of on-screen time, which is pretty decent, if not average for a flagship smartphone. Of course, the biggest curiosity with this phone is the dual camera system designed by Leica. Now, we've seen dual camera systems before, and they always do different things. Some cameras take 2 different types of pictures depending on which lens you're using. Some of them use use it for depth information, and in this case, both cameras take the photograph and combine the image to create the best image possible. Now, both cameras have the same specs, 12 megapixels with an f2.2 aperture, and they do not feature optical image stabilization. One of the sensors is a monochrome sensor, which is more light sensitive than the standard color sensor. And of course, the image processor stitches all that information together to create the best image possible. And in terms of autofocusing, we have a lot of mechanisms at play here to help us out. So we have laser autofocusing, depth autofocusing thanks to the dual camera setup, and we also have contrast-based autofocusing. So we have a lot of ways of getting the right focus for our image. In terms of camera quality, this camera really stands out for one particular reason, and that is exposure. So it's able to really bring up the details in shadow, which tends to get lost, especially in overprocessing. So you're able to see crisp details without completely blowing out the highlights, and it's able to preserve much of the color information. So generally speaking, in terms of balancing both the highlights and lowlights of a shot, this is one of the best cameras I've ever tested. Now, I wouldn't say it's a completely perfect camera. Sometimes it looks a little over sharpened, and in some cases the color information is sort of washed out, and some shots can be a bit overexposed. So it can be hit or miss, but for the most part this camera does deliver results I typically don't see out of most smartphones. This is more consistent with a point-and-shoot camera. Now, in terms of extremely low light conditions, again, this camera is able to preserve a lot of detail without overprocessing and color noise, but it doesn't have a lot of sensitivity, so images are a little dark and some of the color detail is washed out. So it's not the best camera in terms of low light performance, but it's definitely better than average. Now, when it comes to video, this camera does have a few issues. One of them is the lack of 4K video recording, which is becoming pretty much standard on most modern smartphones. Unfortunately, we're stuck at 1080p at best, and part of that is this dual camera system does not have optical image stabilization, which is an essential for effective 4K video recording. Now, this does have 1080p with aggressive software stabilization, which can be a little too aggressive, but it does make the video very smooth. It's not the best looking 1080p camera out there, but it does get the job done, and unfortunately, video is not this camera's biggest strong suit. What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, testing out the front-facing camera of the Huawei P9, which is 8 megapixels, good for 1080p HD video, delivering really good results here. It looks very crisp and clear with good exposure, so you're able to see a good amount of detail. It's able to see my face and focus on my face, so it's adjusting the exposure accordingly, and it's very smooth and consistent. We also have great audio pickup thanks to that dual microphone setup. And so generally speaking, it's a really good camera, and we do have that beauty face feature, so if you want to soften the details on your face so you look a little younger, you can do that, as I'm doing right now. So I'm sliding this up and down, so it's actively softening the details in my face. So there you go, you get to spend a lot of time looking at my face in this video. Next up, let's check out the interface for the phone, and this is a Motion UI on top of Android 6.0. And if you want to take a look at the profile for this phone, we're going to go to About This Phone, and you can see that it's EMUI 4.1 with Android 6.0. So getting to the lock screen here, if you tap the lock button, every time you get a different wallpaper, and we have our fingerprint sensor on the back, which is very responsive and quick. So while you're on the lock screen, if you swipe up, you have quick access to things like your camera, your flashlights, in addition to a calculator or a sound recorder. And then you have this interface for controlling the wallpapers that load on your lock screen. So I can click play, so this will automatically advance to the next image as I unlock or lock the device. I can also remove the image if I don't like it. I can share it. I can like this image so it saves and doesn't automatically delete. And I can also go to settings here to manage some of this. So if I unlock my device, it takes me to settings. So I can adjust the subscriptions that are feeding those images. So you can see all of them are currently subscribed, which was here by default. And if you want to unsubscribe from some of these, like style, I can go ahead and unsubscribe from those. And then I can also update the covers, so this will automatically load the latest covers, and I can have it automatically update over Wi-Fi or auto delete the images that are older than 3 months, and I can also manage the screen lock and passwords on my lock screen. Now, in terms of these home screens, it's actually somewhat similar to iOS. In fact, we don't have an app drawer, which is usually common on Android devices. All the apps are instead loaded on the home screen. In fact, if you want to delete these apps, if you tap and hold on them, you can see that certain apps are not uninstallable because they are system applications. Now, if we go to the ones that we can uninstall, like Instagram here, you can see we have uninstalled to delete it. Now, in terms of folder and apps, of course, we can drag and drop, but they also make it easier, so you can actually add them from the entire app selection. Another thing you may notice is that the icon pack for the stock apps are all very consistent, but for apps that don't conform, you'll see that they've added this border to the app icons. In some cases, it doesn't look very good here, like the Hangouts app or the Maps app, you get a slight border around it. So the idea here is to provide a little more visual consistency across the OS, very similar to iOS. You can also access universal search by swiping down on the home screen, and you can see your recently accessed apps toward the top. And of course, you can search for anything such as emails. If you want to search for your emails, this will bring up apps, contacts, or results within Twitter. Now, in terms of the notification sheet, it doesn't look anything like stock Android. I actually like some of the features here, such as the timeline along the left side. So you can see when those notifications appeared pretty easily. And of course, you can expand them out by swiping with a two-finger gesture. We also have our shortcuts or our quick setting toggles right here, which includes our brightness slider, as well as all these toggles that are available to us, which we can edit. So if we go to edit, you can see the ones that we have currently available up top, and you can drag and drop certain ones to the top here. Now, unfortunately, you're limited to a certain number up top, so you have to bump one out in order to add another. Now, in terms of these shortcuts, most of them are pretty standard stuff for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, airplane mode, that sort of thing. And of course, if you tap and hold on them, they'll take you directly to the settings panel. But there are a few things worth pointing out, such as ultra battery. So this is a ultra battery saving mode. So it's designed to cripple the phone to basically extend the battery life as best as you can possibly get it, while still preserving basic functions, such as the phone dialer, messaging, access to your contacts, and that sort of thing. And of course, you can exit when you don't need it. We also get a screen recorder. This will explain exactly how it works. It tells you that if you get a phone call, it turns it off, that sort of thing. So we're going to agree to that. And it starts this countdown. And if I want to do HD, I can go ahead and select HD. Mini is a lower resolution. So let me go and select HD. Once it starts recording, you'll see an indicator in the status tree up top that's telling you it's recording right now. So this will record everything, including audio from the external microphone, as well as whatever I'm doing on the screen, such as video playback or whatever. And if I want to stop recording it, I can click that, saves the clip. I can go to the notification panel, jump right to it, and play it back if I want. The status tree up top is telling you it's recording right now, so this will record everything. Another unique feature is the floating dock. So if we toggle this on, we now have this little button. We can move around on the left or right side. And if you tap on this, this gives us access to our Android navigation keys, such as back, home, and recent apps. Now, we don't have the long press options we have with the true navigation keys here, so they're somewhat limited. But we have a lock button for locking the device, and then we have this optimize button. So if we tap this, this will clear up some memory space and optimize the system, and it will tell you exactly what it does down here. Now, it doesn't close the background apps here, so you can see all the apps I've opened are still here. And of course, if you want to get rid of this, just tap and hold and minus it out. Now, if you tap, hold, and release, you can go ahead and edit your home screen. So you can see your wallpapers, widgets, even the transitions, and more settings. So again, you can cycle through your home screens here. You can rearrange them by tapping and holding on them and moving them around. You can also select which one you want to be the home screen by tapping this icon up here. So if you want this one to be the home screen, you can select that, etc. We also have our transitions down here. You can see the ones that are available. So you have the default as well as many others you can pick from. And then we have more settings. So we have our home layout. So if you want a more denser layout, you can go with 5x5. You can see exactly what this does. So now it's very dense. We also have auto align, so this will automatically fill vacancies after you remove an app. Personally, I would want that. You can also shake to realign the home screen apps. We also have badge app icons. So if you don't want those notification icons to appear on your app badges, you can also turn those off if you want. And then we can also loop the home screen. So if you just want to continue looping as you swipe across it, you can do that as well. Next, I want to talk about the gestures that are available with this device, and they start with the fingerprint sensor. So we can actually access our notification panel by swiping up and down here on the sensor, which is kind of nice. So if I want to dismiss it, I can swipe up, swipe down to access the panel. Now, unfortunately, you can't scroll through the panel with this gesture at all. You can just swipe up or swipe down to bring it up. Also, if you're within the camera app, you can tap and hold on this in order to take a photograph. And once you take that photograph, you can go ahead and swipe through your photo gallery with that sensor. You can also receive phone calls by tapping that sensor as well. Another thing here is you can use a knuckle knock in order to take a screen grab. You can also draw with your knuckle here, so if you want to take a partial screen grab, you can do that as well. You can also draw certain letters to activate apps, so I can draw a C to activate the camera app. I can also draw an E to activate Chrome, W to get to the weather, or M to get to the music app. You can turn off these gestures or turn them on. Most of them are not on by default. So for example, in terms of those touch ID gestures, if you go to fingerprint ID, we have 3 touch and hold gestures for taking a photograph, answering a phone call, or stopping alarms. You can turn those off. And we have the slide gesture for up and down for the notification panel, or left and right for browsing photos. And in terms of those drawing gestures, it's a little more buried here. So it's under motion control, and you can see that we have this draw feature, so you can see how this works. So you can turn this off if you want, and you can see the available actions. And if you want to select different apps for each of these actions, so if you want C to open up contacts or messaging or whatever, you can select a different app for each one. We also have several other motion gestures such as flip. So we can enable flip to mute incoming calls and timers and alarms if you want. We also have pickup. So if you pick up the phone and somebody is calling you, this will reduce the ringtone, or if the alarm or buzzer is going off, you can also reduce the volume as well if you're handling it. We also have raise to ear. So if your phone is ringing and you raise it to your ear, once it meets your ear, it will answer the call, which is handy to have. We can also make a call if we're looking at a contact and raise it to our ear, so automatically knows you want to make a phone call. And then we have smart speaker and smart Bluetooth headset. So if you're on a speaker call and you raise the phone to your ear, it automatically switches the call to your ear. Same with Bluetooth headset. So if you raise the phone to your ear, it automatically disconnects the Bluetooth headset so you can take the call over the earpiece. Getting back to the settings panel, there's a few things to take a look at here. Under Wi-Fi, we have Wi-Fi Plus, which augments Wi-Fi with your cellular network. So if you want to improve performance, you can turn this on, or if you don't want it to use your cellular data, you can turn it off. Next up, we have the home screen style. So we have standard or simple. So we take a look at simple by applying it. A very bold interface, so it's easy to see with all of our core features highlighted on these home screens. And we do have access to our apps here, so you want to go to the other apps that are available, you can go ahead and do so, and then you can also just leave this if you want. Under display, we'll find a color temperature setting. So we have default, warm, or cold, and then we have our point here we can drag around if we want to select something different. Under notification panel and status bar, we have drag action. So we have two options, smart selection and determine from drag position. So with smart selection, if you swipe down from the top here to get to your notification panel, it takes you right to your notifications. But if all of those are cleared out when you drag, it will take you directly to the shortcuts panel, which makes it a bit easier. Now, personally, I prefer the other option here, which is determine from drag position. So if I select that, if I swipe down on the right, I get to my quick settings. If I swipe down on the left, I get to my notification panel. Another feature I'm actually glad to see is that you can turn off the notification icons in the status bar. It's a feature I wish more Android devices had. Under Smart Assistants, we have a lot of features here, such as our navigation bar. So we can select from a different layout if we prefer. We can also add this button here for dragging down your notification panel. So again, there's a number of ways you can open up your notification center. We also have one-handed UI. So this is something you can turn on and off. You can also use a shifting keyboard. So if you want a one-handed keyboard, you can swipe left or right to enable it. So in terms of how this works, you swipe left or right on the navigation bar. If you want to exit it, you just tap the black space here. So if you want right, again, you swipe to the right and then tap the black space to get rid of it. And if you want a one-handed keyboard, you have left or right by tapping these arrows. We also have voice control, which can do a number of things, and one of the things it can do is wake up when the device is locked. Now, this is trained to my voice, and you can train a specific command or wake up phrase if you want. But in this case, I just went with the default phrase, which is, "Okay, Emmy." And you can see the two available actions, which is, "Where are you?" and "Call a specific caller." "Okay, Emmy, where are you?"
I'm here.
So it's sort of a way of finding your phone if it's nearby but you can't see it. We also get a glove mode, so this increases the sensitivity of the display so you can use it with gloved hands. We also have touch disable mode. So if the phone is in your pocket or in a bag, this will prevent unintentional operation of the display, which is important with glove mode. We also have schedule power on and off, so if you want the device to turn on and off on schedule, you can set it up here. Under advanced settings, this is where you'll find your battery manager, which is kind of a strange place to hide it, but basically this will give you plenty of power saving options, such as enable ROG power saving, so this lowers the screen resolution to 720, which will save battery life. So this is a 1080p display. If you lower it to 720, let's go ahead and enable this. This will make it look a little more crunchy, but again, it saves some power. Now, I have to say 720p is actually not too bad at all. Text does look a little less sharp than before, but generally speaking, from a certain distance, it looks just fine. We also have our power plan, and this gives us three options for performance. So this slightly adjusts the CPU and network usage to maximize battery life. And then you have smart, which is better for daily usage. So this is a little more aggressive. And then we have that ultra power saving mode, which we talked about earlier. So if you want to select one of those three, you can. We also have protected apps. So these are apps that are excluded from any power saving measures. So they'll continue updating in the background or that sort of thing. And you can see which apps are using the most power. And if you want to select all apps, you can turn that on. Another unique power management feature is this notification that lets you know when certain apps are power intensive. So we can close that app from the notification panel, or you can tell it to stop reminding you. Now in terms of this camera app, there is a lot going on here. So you can swipe in from the right edge to get to your settings panel, swipe in from the left edge and you can get to your modes, and there's a lot of them. We can also swipe up on this little bar just above the shutter release button that gives us access to our Pro mode. So it's not a separate mode, it's always available if you just swipe up here, so that's kind of nice. So we have controls for focus, ISO, shutter speed, EEV, autofocusing, as well as white balance. And of course, if you want to exit Pro mode, just swipe down and you go back to automatic mode. So once you're in automatic mode, we have a few features up top to take a look at, which includes this sort of shallow depth of field camera. So basically it blurs the background to give you this more artistic look. If you want to exit that, you can go ahead and tap that to dismiss it. We also have our front-facing camera, and it does feature this beauty aid. So basically it softens the details of your face, so it makes it look a little more flattering. And then we also have modes here. So if you swipe in, you can see all the modes that are available here, such as mirror reflection. You can mute the audio if you want, timer, audio control so you can talk to it and take the photograph, smile capture, and more. And then we also have several modes here for the selfie camera, such as audio note, time-lapse, beauty video. Now in terms of using the camera, it's pretty basic here. Just hit the shutter release. You can tap anywhere to adjust exposure and focus, and you do get a manual exposure adjuster right next to it. And of course, you can tap and hold to take a burst shot. In terms of these modes, there's a lot of them. So we have beauty, video, and photo. We have light painting for those long exposure light painting effects if you want to do those. We have watermarking your images, document scan, so if you just want to scan for text. Audio note for applying a note to your photograph. We have time-lapse, slow-mo, night shot, and panorama, in addition to standards like video, HDR, and monochrome. So in the end, there is a lot to like about the P9 with its thin, lightweight, well-made hardware and specs that can keep up with its pretty heavy skin. And when it comes to software, the Android experience definitely is very different from stock, but it's a really good looking skin. And I'm pretty impressed overall with all the features it adds and its performance. Now when it comes to that camera system, it definitely offers some unique capabilities, but it's maybe not the best camera system out there, especially if video is important to you. But ultimately, in the end, this is a phone that really misses nothing and offers some unique features. Alrighty guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the Huawei P9. If you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next video.